The summer heat hung thick over Fort Willow Creek, making the wooden walls groan and the air shimmer as if the desert itself were breathing. Clara Weston wiped the dust from her skirt as she stepped into the Army infirmary, carrying a basket of fresh linen she had volunteered to wash. It was the only task that kept her close to the one patient. The entire town whispered about the silent Apache warrior who hadn't moved in 22 days. They called him the dead man who hadn't died yet. Clara had only known him by the name the scouts uttered, Coda, a warrior from one of the Apache bands that roamed the mesas beyond town. A man feared by settlers and respected by his own people. He'd been found gravely wounded after an ambush no one could explain. 3 arrows, a shattered rib, a blow to the head strong enough to silence even the fiercest fighter. The garrison believed he wouldn't last the night, but he did. And then he survived another. And another. By the 3rd week, most people stopped caring. The Army doctor only checked on him once a day. The sheriff said he was a burden. The soldiers joked he was too stubborn to die. Clara had never spoken a word to him. But something about him made her come back again and again, sometimes under the pretense of bringing water, sometimes with the excuse of changing bandages. Every visit left her heart feeling strangely heavy, as if she were witnessing something sacred and fragile. That afternoon, she entered the dim room, letting her eyes adjust to the shadows. There he lay, motionless on the cot, his chest raising and falling slowly like a distant drumbeat. His dark hair was braided loosely over his shoulder. His skin bronze even after weeks out of the sun. His hands calloused and scarred in ways that told stories no words could capture. Clara placed the linens on the table, but her eyes drifted back to him, drawn the way moths are drawn to fire. She stepped closer, feeling her heart thump. "Good afternoon, Coda," she whispered, though she knew he could not hear her. "I brought clean sheets today. The doctor forgets sometimes." She reached out and gently lifted his hand to place a fresh cloth beneath it. His fingers were cold. "Too cold. Your strength is still in there," she murmured. "I know it." She did not know where the belief came from. Perhaps from the soft determination she saw in the slight crease at his brow, the way his jaw seemed to hold on to life with stubborn dignity. Or maybe it was simply the loneliness in her own life, the desire to believe anyone would fight to stay. She realized she was still holding his hand. Embarrassed, she set it down carefully and turned away. Just then, the infirmary door swung open. Sergeant Mullins, broad and loud, stomped inside. "Clara, you ought to stop wasting your time with him," he grunted. "The captain says we're moving him tomorrow. He's taking up space." Clara froze. "Where will they move him?" "Outside town. Maybe farther." "Doesn't matter. Man's practically a corpse." Her breath felt trapped in her throat. They'd move him to die alone in the desert. Like a wounded animal, abandoned. Mullins shook his head. "You got too soft a heart for your own good." When he left, Clara's hands trembled. She looked back at Coda, lying helpless and unaware of his fate. Something inside her hardened an instinct, a spark, a fierce protectiveness she didn't understand. "No," she whispered. "You're not going to die alone." The idea slipped into her mind like a forbidden seed, shocking her with its boldness. There was a way to keep him from being moved. A way through Apache custom. A life marriage. She didn't know the whole tradition. Only pieces an elder woman in town once spoke of it, explaining that an unconscious or dying warrior could be given a symbolic wife to accompany him into the afterworld. If he had a wife, the Army couldn't send him away. Clara's pulse hammered. A wife. The thought terrified her. It was reckless, absurd, improper. And yet her gaze returned to Coda. There was something about this man, something she couldn't name, that made the world fall silent. Slowly, she approached his bedside again, her fingers brushing the back of his still hand. "If you can hear me," she whispered, her voice quivering, "just hold on. I won't let them send you away." Her vow hung in the quiet room like a prayer, and in that moment, though no one else saw it, Coda's eyelids flickered just once, as if the dying warrior heard her and chose. Even in silence, Clara Weston did not sleep that night. She paced her small cabin with her hands clasped tight, the words of Sergeant Mullins echoing again and again. "He's taking up space. We're moving him tomorrow. Man's practically a corpse." A corpse. They spoke of him as if his life meant nothing. She kept seeing Coda's face, the stillness, the quiet strength even in unconsciousness, the flicker she thought she had seen in his eyelids. She knew it could have been nothing, yet her heart insisted it was something. When the first morning light crept across her floorboards, Clara made her decision. She braided her hair with trembling fingers, put on her cleanest dress, and marched toward the far side of town, where the only person who could give her answers lived. The elder who knew the Apache Martha Redbird was half Navajo, half Mexican, and one of the few people whose knowledge of the Apache made the townsfolk both respect and fear her. She lived in a tiny adobe house surrounded by herbs and old woven blankets. When Clara knocked on her door, Martha opened it slowly, as if she already knew why the young woman had come. "You look like a soul carrying a storm," Martha said, her deep voice warm but sharp. "Come inside." Clara entered and sat at the wooden table. She tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. Finally, she forced them out. "Martha, I need to know about the Apache life marriage. The one for dying warriors." Martha didn't move for a moment. Her dark eyes studied Clara with unsettling clarity. "So you are serious," Martha murmured. "You want to become that dying man's wife." Clara swallowed hard. "They're going to move him today. He'll die out there, alone. I can't let that happen." Martha's gaze softened just a little. "You know nothing about him. You do not know his family, his clan, his people." "I know enough," Clara whispered. "I know he deserves dignity." Martha slowly sat across from her. "A life marriage is not just a ritual. It is a bond. Even if the man never wakes, you would become part of his spirit journey, part of his afterworld. It is no small thing." Clara lowered her eyes. "He'd be better off with anyone but me. But I'm the only one who cares." A long silence settled. Finally, Martha stood, reached into a carved wooden chest, and pulled out a small ceremonial band of woven leather and turquoise. "If you mean to do this, you will need this." Clara stared at it, barely daring to breathe. The marriage that stunned the fort by mid-morning, Clara was walking back toward Fort Willow Creek with Martha at her side. The sun blazed overhead, but Clara barely felt it. Every step made her heart thrum harder. Two soldiers at the infirmary entrance stiffened when they saw them. "Ma'am, you can't go in captain's orders." Martha stepped forward with the authority of a queen. "This woman is here to claim her husband." The soldiers blinked. "Her what?" Clara's chin lifted, though her knees nearly buckled. "I am here for Coda. He is to be my husband." Voices rose. Word spread like wildfire. Within minutes, half the fort had gathered, whispering, gawking, some even laughing. "She's lost her mind. A white woman marrying an Apache? That man can't even speak. Does it even count?" The captain stormed over, face red. "Clara Weston, this is madness. That man isn't even awake." Martha glared at him. "And yet our customs allow it. She chooses him. That is all that is required." Clara's hand shook as she clutched the ceremonial band. She stepped into the infirmary, ignoring the murmurs behind her. Coda lay exactly where she'd left him, as still as stone. Martha bowed her head. "Place your hand on his heart." Clara leaned over him, her fingers trembling as they rested on his warm skin. The world outside fell silent. "Speak your vow," Martha instructed. Clara took a breath, praying her voice wouldn't break. "Coda, I do not know your past. I do not know your people. But I know your life matters. I vow to stay by you in whatever journey you take from this world or into the next." Her voice wavered. "You will not cross alone." Martha tied the leather band gently around Clara's wrist, then around Coda's. Binding them symbolically, "It is done." Clara felt the weight of it crash into her chest. Fear, awe, responsibility, and an inexplicable tenderness she could not explain. Outside, the soldiers were stunned. The captain sputtered but could not undo what was now a recognized spiritual marriage. Clara Weston had married a man who could not speak, could not stand, could not even open his eyes. But as she looked down at him, something inside her whispered that she had done the only thing she could, and somewhere deep in the silence of Coda's mind beyond pain, beyond darkness, a faint warmth began to stir. The fort never truly slept, but the night after the marriage ceremony felt unusually quiet, as if even the desert wind was trying not to disturb the fragile union forged in the infirmary. Clara Weston sat beside Coda's cot, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes fixed on the faint rise and fall of his chest. The leather and turquoise band, connecting their wrists, glimmered softly in the lantern light. Every so often, Clara would glance at it and swallow hard, as if still trying to believe what she had done. "I married a stranger," she reminded herself. "A man who doesn't even know I exist." But deep down beneath the fear, beneath the uncertainty, something else whispered, "You did the right thing." Still, doubt clung to her like a second skin. Outside the infirmary, a few soldiers muttered about the ridiculous ceremony, and someone snickered that she had signed herself up for a ghost marriage. The captain avoided her altogether, unwilling to admit that the odd ritual meant the army couldn't legally relocate Coda now. Clara hardly noticed the noise. She only saw the man lying motionless before her. His wounds were severe, but it wasn't just the physical damage that frightened her, it was how still his spirit seemed. Like a flame that had once burned fiercely, but now flickered at the edge of darkness. She leaned closer, brushing a stray lock of dark hair from his temple with careful fingers. His skin felt warm beneath her touch, but only just. "Coda," she whispered, "I don't know if you can hear me. I don't even know if you're fighting to stay." Her voice tightened. "But if you are, please don't stop." Silence answered her. Her shoulders dropped. Weariness tugged at her bones, yet she didn't want to leave. Not now. Not when he had no one else. She rested her forehead gently against his hand. "I wish I could hear your voice," she admitted softly. "Even just once. Just to know this wasn't all for nothing." A storm outside and a storm inside hours passed. The lantern flickered low as Clara nodded off in the wooden chair, half asleep, half alert. Outside, thunder rumbled across the plains, a rare desert storm rolling in fast out. The winds howled, rattling the infirmary windows. Lightning cracked bright enough to illuminate the walls. Clara jolted awake, heart racing. "Coda?" she whispered, turning toward him instinctively, though he hadn't moved, not even a twitch. Her breath shook, and she reached for the water basin, dipping a cloth to cool his fevered brow. For a moment, the contact steadied her, but when she pulled back, her hand caught the leather band linking her wrist to his, and something inside her broke a little. "This isn't how a marriage is supposed to begin," she whispered hoarsely. As the storm pounded against the wooden roof, Clara slid closer and rested her hand on his chest, feeling the slow rhythm of his heartbeat. "I don't know why I feel connected to you," she murmured. "I don't know why I dream of your eyes opening, of you looking at me like I matter. But something about you." Her voice trailed. Lightning flashed, illuminating Coda's face. In that split second, he looked less like a dying man and more like a warrior resting before a long journey. A warrior she felt inexplicably drawn to. The sight made her throat tighten. She leaned down, her lips only inches from his ear. "Please," she whispered. "Come back." The kiss. Clara didn't mean to do it. It wasn't planned. It wasn't the act of a woman seeking romance or attention. It was instinct. Pure, aching instinct. With tears gathering in her lashes, she pressed a trembling kiss to his lips. Soft, quick, almost uncertain. A farewell kiss she hoped would reach whatever part of him still lingered in this world. The moment her lips touched his, a jolt ran through her. Not from the storm. Not from fear. From him. She pulled back sharply, breath shaking. "Coda?" For a long, terrifying second, nothing happened. Then his finger twitched. Clara froze, her pulse roaring in her ears. "Coda?" His chest rose sharply. His eyelids fluttered once, twice, and then slowly, painfully, they opened. Dark, deep eyes stared back at her. "Alive, awake, confused, Clara single quotes as breath broke. "Oh my God, you're awake." Coda blinked, trying to focus on the pale-haired woman before him. The woman whose hand was wrapped in his. The woman whose tears fell on his cheek. And the first sound he made was a low, raw whisper. "Who are you?" Clara's heart shattered and soared at the same time. "I'm your wife," she whispered. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, a miracle had happened. The warrior had returned because of one kiss. Coda blinked again, slower this time, as if trying to shake off the fog that had settled over his mind for weeks. The storm outside had passed, leaving the desert night cool and silent, but inside the infirmary, Clara's heart pounded as she watched him struggle to regain awareness. His chest rose and fell unevenly, a testament to the wounds he had survived. Every shallow breath seemed to carry both fragility and strength. "Your wife," Coda whispered again, his voice rough, unpracticed. His dark eyes darted around the room, still half-dazed. "I don't understand." Clara pressed her hand against his, seeking to anchor him. "I know," she murmured, trying to calm both him and herself. "It's a lot. I didn't expect this either, but—" She paused, swallowing her fear. "I married you because I couldn't let you die alone. You have to believe me." Coda's gaze softened briefly, but confusion clouded his expression. The memory of the ambush, the pain, the darkness, it all lingered in fragments. He could not remember her, could not recall any part of the ceremony or the words that had bound them together. And yet, something deeper, something instinctive, stirred inside him. A recognition like the faint echo of a dream. "You? I don't know you," he admitted. His voice trembled, not from weakness alone, but from the unfamiliarity of her presence. How can I trust what you say?" Clara's lips quivered, but she held his gaze. "You don't have to trust me yet. You just have to trust yourself. And that spark inside you that wanted to keep living. That's why you're here. That's why you opened your eyes." For the first time since he regained consciousness, Coda studied her closely. He noticed her determination, the quiet courage in her posture, and the unwavering warmth in her eyes. There was something undeniably familiar in her presence, though he could not name it. His heart, scarred and weary, recognized her in a way his mind did not. "You stayed by me," he said, his voice barely audible. "Through all of it?" Clara nodded, tears brimming but refusing to fall. "Every day. Every hour. I didn't leave because someone has to care when no one else does." Coda's fingers twitched slightly, brushing against hers, and he felt a strange tether, an invisible thread linking them. It was stronger than memory, stronger than logic. It was instinct. And in that instinct, he sensed trust, protection, and something he had not felt in years, safety. "You're brave," he said quietly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I can feel it, even if I can't remember why." Clara exhaled slowly, relief mingling with the weight of the moment. She had feared his rejection, the disbelief, the possibility that he would never accept her. But instead, there was a delicate acknowledgement forming a bridge across the gap between memory and emotion. As Coda began to regain strength, he noticed the leather and turquoise band linking their wrists. He lifted his hand to examine it, his brow furrowed. What does this mean?" "It's our bond," Clara explained gently. "In your culture, it's a marriage, a commitment. Even if you don't remember it, it's real. You are my husband, and I am yours." Coda's eyes lingered on the band, and though he did not fully understand, he could feel its weight and significance. It was not merely a symbol, it was a promise, an unspoken truth that somehow resonated with the deepest part of him. His chest tightened as he realized that the woman before him, this foreign yet familiar presence, had claimed him in a way that transcended words or reason. The room grew quieter, the only sound being the gentle rhythm of his recovering heartbeat. Clara's hand remained on his, offering reassurance and patience. And Coda, though still uncertain, felt the stirrings of something powerful, a connection he could not yet name, but one he instinctively trusted. You saved me," he whispered at last, voice husky with emotion. I don't remember how, but I feel it. I feel you. I don't know how to repay this." Clara smiled softly, brushing his fingers with her thumb. "You don't have to repay anything. Just live. That's enough." For the first time since he had awakened, Coda allowed himself to relax slightly. He didn't remember her fully, but he knew her. He knew that her presence meant life, warmth, and a tether to the world he had almost left behind. And in that quiet moment, both of them understood, without words, without memories, that their bond was real. It was strong. It was unshakable. And it was only just beginning. Outside, the desert night stretched endlessly, silent and watchful, as if it, too, recognized the miracle that had unfolded within the walls of the fort. By the next morning, word of Coda's miraculous awakening and his marriage to Clara Weston had spread through Fort Willow Creek like wildfire. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into gossip, and gossip into outright outrage. The townsfolk, already wary of outsiders, now faced a reality that challenged every rigid notion they had about race, tradition, and propriety. At the general store, old men shook their heads. "A white woman married to an Apache?" one muttered. "The world's gone mad." Women avoided Clara on the street, clutching their shawls and children tightly. She's chosen a man no decent woman would touch," one neighbor hissed. "It's scandalous." The sheriff, a large man with a permanent scowl, confronted her the first chance he got. "Clara Weston," he barked, "you've created a situation that's unacceptable. That man's not part of our town." "You can't," he stopped, unsure of the proper words. He had no precedent for a situation like this. Clara stood tall, though her stomach twisted with fear and defiance. "He is alive because I chose to stay," she said firmly. "And he is my husband by tradition, by law, by choice. I won't abandon him." The sheriff narrowed his eyes but made no immediate move to intervene. Behind him, a few soldiers looked uneasy, shifting their weight as they realized the army could do nothing to override the spiritual marriage Martha Redbird had recognized. It was an uncomfortable truth. Clara had rights, no matter how unconventional the townspeople found them. Coda steps forward. Meanwhile, Coda, still weak but regaining strength daily, sensed the hostility around them. He had no desire to fight every whisper, every suspicious glance, but his instincts would not allow Clara to face it alone. She had saved him. She had kissed him back to life. Now it was his turn to protect her. He struggled to sit upright in the infirmary, wincing as old wounds reminded him of their severity. When he finally stood, Clara helped him steady himself. He looked out the window at the small crowd of gawking townsfolk. His dark eyes narrowed, fierce and resolute, even as the physical pain lingered. "They speak as though we are both criminals," Coda said quietly, his voice deep and steady. "They cannot touch us, not while we honor each other." Clara felt a thrill of relief and awe. She had feared rejection, feared that waking him would mean a stranger, confused and distant. Instead, he had embraced her fully in the silent language of recognition and protection. He stepped outside for the first time since awakening, his tall figure casting a long shadow in the morning sun. Whispers swelled into mutters of shock and outrage. "You let her marry you?" one gruff man demanded. Coda's gaze was steady. "She is my wife, and no one will harm her while I live." The words carried weight. There was no arrogance, only certainty. The townsfolk realized slowly that this man, though still recovering, was not to be trifled with. His presence alone was commanding. The backlash escalates, but not everyone was intimidated. Some took to plotting, believing the marriage to be a threat to their control over the town. Rumors of sabotage and threats began to surface, and Clara could feel the tension coil around her like a rattlesnake ready to strike. Even inside the infirmary, the air was heavy. Friends she once had avoided her, and strangers stared. Some questioned the legitimacy of the marriage. Others whispered that the Apache warrior could be dangerous, even violent. Clara could almost hear the judgment echoing in the walls. Yet Coda did not flinch. He stayed close to her side, moving with a silent grace that reassured her. Every glance, every careful touch of her hand spoke volumes. He was her protector, her partner, her husband. A silent promise that night as Clara sat beside Coda in the infirmary once more, she felt the weight of the day's scrutiny pressing down on them. She tried to mask her worry, but he noticed. Without a word, he took her hand, squeezing it gently. The leather band linking them reminded them both of their bond, an unbreakable thread in the midst of chaos. "They will try to turn the town against us," he said quietly. "Let them. I will not abandon you. They will not harm you. Not now, not ever." Clara met his gaze and felt a shiver of awe. The man who had once been on the brink of death, the man she had married while he lay comatose, now stood as her protector and equal. Together, they had forged a bond stronger than fear, stronger than prejudice, stronger than the uncertainty of the desert frontier. Outside, Fort Willow Creek slept uneasily, the whispers and judgment of the day still lingering in the shadows. But inside the infirmary, the miracle of life and love had blossomed, and for Clara and Coda, that was all that mattered. Coda's strength returned slowly, each step a reminder of how close he had come to death. But as his body healed, fragments of memory began to resurface, shards of the ambush that had nearly ended his life. The first flash hit him one quiet night while Clara sat beside him, gently braiding his hair to keep the tangles at bay. The screams, the arrows, the men in the shadows, not enemies but familiar faces. He drew in a sharp breath. "Clara," he whispered, his voice tight. "Something is not right. The attack, the ambush? It wasn't just a random raid." Clara's fingers froze. "What do you mean?" Coda's dark eyes glimmered with the fire of recollection, and for the first time since he woke, he looked vulnerable in a way that frightened Clara. "I remember faces," he said slowly, voice trembling. "Men I knew, men from this town. They weren't trying to protect the fort. They wanted me dead, and not just me, my people." Clara's heart thumped so loud it seemed the entire room could hear it. But why? Who would? I don't know yet, Coda said, closing his eyes as the memories churned. But someone here betrayed me. They wanted my land, my tribe's territory. And maybe they wanted to send a message. His voice hardened. And now, Clara, you're involved, Clara flinched. She had known marrying him would be controversial, but she had never imagined it could bring danger so close to her own doorstep. Coda, what do we do? He opened his eyes, determination hardening every line of his face. We uncover the truth. Whoever did this, they underestimated me. They underestimated us. Investigating the betrayal over the following days, Coda and Clara quietly questioned the townsfolk. Each inquiry revealed more hints of deceit. Soldiers who had been unusually cooperative during the ambush, merchants who had profited suspiciously from land transactions, even whispers of the sheriff's men scouting the Apache camp in secret. Each revelation tightened a knot of danger around them. Coda's memories became sharper. Faces, names, even fragments of conversations that had seemed meaningless before now formed a horrifying pattern. Clara, he said one evening, his tone grim. Someone powerful in this town wanted me out of the way. Not just for vengeance, for land, for control. They plotted it all, even my supposed allies were involved. Clara's hand gripped his arm, fear and admiration mixing in her gaze. And now they know about us, about our marriage. That makes it worse. Yes, Coda said, but it also makes us stronger. They see a man weakened by wounds, a woman alone, and they think we are easy to break. They don't know we've already survived worse. Together we are unbreakable. Threats emerged, their fears proved well-founded. One evening, while Coda rested after a long day of walking the town and speaking with witnesses, a rock crashed against the infirmary window. A crude note followed. Leave him or you'll regret it. Clara's hand shook as she unfolded it. Coda, though still tired, clenched his fists. They think they can intimidate us, he said, jaw tight. They're wrong. The attack, though small, was a warning. Someone inside the town was desperate, willing to risk more to silence the Apache warrior and now his wife. Clara looked at him, awe and fear warring in her heart. Coda, are you ready for what's coming? He placed a firm hand over hers. I am, because you are with me. And together, we will face them. I will protect you. And I will make sure justice is done. The bond deepens that night as the desert wind whispered outside the infirmary. Clara and Coda sat close, hands intertwined, shoulders touching. The danger outside had not lessened, but within the room there was an unspoken promise. No betrayal, no fear, and no enemy would ever separate them. Clara rested her head lightly against Coda's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It was a sound that had once seemed unreachable, a sound that had once been silenced by death. Now it was a reminder that they had survived the impossible, and that together they could face the treachery threatening their lives. Coda's arm wrapped protectively around her. They do not understand, he murmured, voice low but fierce. We are stronger than they know. And when the time comes, they will regret ever trying to harm us. Outside the town of Fort Willow, Creek slept uneasily, oblivious to the storm brewing behind closed doors. But inside the small infirmary, Clara and Coda knew that the truth of the ambush was only the beginning. And as danger closed in, their love, trust, and courage would be tested like never before. The days following Coda's discovery of the ambush's betrayal were tense, the kind of tension that makes the air itself feel heavy. Fort Willow Creek watched them closely, eyes full of suspicion, fear, and envy, but Coda paid them little mind. His focus remained on Clara, on their bond, and on uncovering the truth without letting anyone harm her. Clara, however, could feel the weight of the town's judgment pressing down on her like a desert storm. Mothers pulled their children away when she passed. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors, and even the soldiers, who had once tolerated her kindness, now gave her sidelong glances of disapproval. It was exhausting, but Clara refused to retreat. This was Coda's fight, yes, but it was hers too. She had married him while he was comatose. She would stand by him while he regained not only his strength, but his rightful place in the world. A private conversation one late evening, the infirmary was quiet. Coda had insisted Clara remain inside, safe from the growing hostility outside. He moved carefully, each step deliberate as he navigated the room that had once been his prison and had now become their refuge. "Coda," Clara said softly, breaking the silence. "I can feel them. Judging us. Some of them hate what we are." Coda turned to her, his eyes dark and unwavering. "They do not understand," he said. His voice carried both authority and tenderness. "They see a man who is wounded and a woman they consider strange, but they do not see what is real. They do not see us." Clara's chest tightened. "What if they try to separate us? What if—" Her voice faltered. Coda crossed the room swiftly and knelt before her, taking both her hands in his. His gaze pierced hers, unyielding. "They will not, because I claim you not just in words, but in truth. You are my wife, Clara, my blood, my life, my heart. You are mine." Clara's breath caught. His words were fierce, raw, and possessive in a way that ignited something deep inside her. She had expected gratitude, maybe relief, but not this burning certainty, this declaration of ownership born of love, respect, and necessity. "You truly mean that?" She whispered. "I do," he said simply. "I woke because of you. I live because of you. And I will defend you, every breath, every heartbeat, every moment I am given." A night of reckoning that night. As the desert wind rattled the infirmary windows, Clara and Coda shared a quiet meal by lamplight. For a moment, the weight of the town, the ambush, and the threats outside faded. Their hands brushed constantly, small touches charged with electricity, affirming their connection. Coda's hand lingered over hers, and she did not pull away. Instead, she allowed herself to feel the truth of their union, one born not from ceremony alone, but from survival, trust, and an unspoken promise. Coda's dark eyes met hers, and the world outside seemed to vanish. "You do not have to fear me," he murmured. "I will not be just a protector. I will be your partner, your equal, and I will claim every part of your heart as you have claimed mine." Clara felt a shiver of anticipation and awe. She had married him in desperation, but now in the quiet of the infirmary she understood the depth of their bond. It was no longer a symbolic act. It was living truth, palpable and unbreakable. The fear and doubt that had haunted her melted away, leaving only trust, passion, and the certainty that they were meant to be together. Living the truth, the next days were a testament to the power of their union. Coda took Clara's hand in public, refusing to hide their marriage despite the town's hostility. Their closeness was a declaration. They were partners, husband and wife, united against the forces conspiring against them. And with each passing day, Clara felt the fire of his protection and the warmth of his devotion. She was no longer the timid frontier woman. She was the wife of an Apache warrior who had returned from the brink of death, and she would stand by him, come what may. In private moments, they shared laughter, whispered confessions, and subtle touches that spoke louder than words. Every shared smile and gentle squeeze of the hand reinforced their truth. They belonged to each other. The bonds of tradition, the miracle of life, and the power of love had converged to make them inseparable. Coda's gaze softened whenever he looked at Clara, And Clara realized that the man who had awakened from the brink of death had found more than life. He had found a reason to live, a purpose, and a love that defied the prejudice and danger surrounding them. A silent promise as night fell again over the desert. The infirmary grew quiet. Outside, Fort Willow Creek whispered of scandal, betrayal, and fear, but inside, Clara and Coda embraced the truth of their marriage, the reality of their love. They were no longer defined by rumors or danger. They were defined by each other. Coda held Clara close, whispering into her hair, "Whatever comes, whatever they try, we face it together. You are mine, and I am yours." Clara closed her eyes, letting the truth sink in. She had married him in desperation, but now, fully awake and fully alive, they had claimed each other in truth and nothing. Not prejudice, not threats, not betrayal could break them. Their bond was no longer symbolic. It was real, fierce, and eternal. The desert sun blazed high over Fort Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the town's dusty streets. For weeks, whispers of betrayal, scandal, and forbidden love had spread like wildfire. But nothing, not prejudice, not rumor, could break the bond between Clara and Coda. The threat that had been simmering behind closed doors had finally reached its climax. A band of conspirators, emboldened by greed and fear, planned to strike against Coda and claim his land for themselves. They underestimated one crucial fact. Coda was no longer the weakened, comatose man they had tried to kill. He was awake, alert, and fiercely determined to protect the woman he had married and the life he had been given. The attack begins. It was late afternoon when the first signs of trouble appeared. A group of armed men, disguised as travelers, approached the outskirts of the fort. Clara spotted them first from the infirmary window, her heart lurching. "Coda!" she shouted, rushing to his side. "They're coming." Coda, already standing, the leather and turquoise band still tied to his wrist, tightened his grip on her hand. His dark eyes glinted with resolve. "Stay behind me," he said. "I will not let them touch you." The intruders approached with a mixture of arrogance and menace, certain that Coda, weakened by weeks of injury, could be intimidated. But as he stepped out into the open, the full height and strength of the warrior became clear. Every inch of him radiated power, courage, and unyielding determination. The conspirators faltered, momentarily stunned by the man who had survived death itself. A battle of will and strength. Coda moved swiftly, yet with careful precision, intercepting the attackers before they could reach Clara. Each swing of his fists and thrust of his stance demonstrated skill honed by years of training and survival. Despite his recent injuries, he fought with the intensity of a man reborn, his love for Clara fueling every move. Clara, standing close behind him, could only watch in awe. She had married a man she hardly knew, yet now she saw the depth of his heart, his courage, and his devotion. The town's fears had been misplaced. The man they had whispered about in scorn was a force of nature when it came to protecting those he loved. As the fight reached its peak, Coda disarmed one man, sending a pistol clattering into the dust. Another, bolder than the rest, lunged at Clara. Without thinking, Coda intercepted, his hand gripping the intruder's shoulder and twisting with controlled strength. The man collapsed, groaning, and the remaining attackers fled. Realizing they had underestimated both the warrior and his indomitable bond with his wife, the town witnesses the miracle. By the time the dust settled, word had spread through the town. Townsfolk who had once whispered against Clara and Coda now watched in stunned silence. The same men who had doubted the comatose warrior's strength and dismissed the marriage as folly now had to acknowledge a truth they could no longer ignore. The love between Clara and Coda was not only real, it was a force that could move mountains, defeat enemies, and survive betrayal. Children peered from behind wooden fences, eyes wide, witnessing a miracle in human form. Mothers pressed hands to their mouths, finally understanding that courage, loyalty, and love were not bound by race or custom, but by the heart. Even the sheriff, begrudging and stoic, nodded once, a silent acknowledgment of the bond he could no longer deny. Victory and redemption. Coda turned to Clara, his eyes softening after the fury of battle. She ran into his arms, clutching him as tears of relief and awe streamed down her face. You were magnificent," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I am alive," Coda replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Because of you. Because we are together, and we will continue to be, no matter what." The town slowly began to accept the miracle that had unfolded before them. The conspirators had fled, and with their departure, Coda and Clara's place in the town and in each other's lives was cemented. For Clara, the woman who had married a man in a coma, the miracle of one kiss had been only the beginning. For Coda, the warrior who had nearly died in betrayal, love had brought him back to life and given him something worth fighting for with every ounce of his being. Future forged in love that night. As the desert wind whispered outside their small cabin on the edge of town, Clara and Coda sat close, hands entwined, hearts beating in unison. The stars above bore witness to their union, a testament to survival, courage, and the unbreakable power of love. Together,